They say a village is alive as long as its drums still speak. But I once heard of a place where the drum stopped in the middle of the night, and the village never spoke again. The name of that place was Obudu. Obudu sat deep in the West African rainforest. No cars reached it, no busy roads passed by. The only way in was by a narrow path through the trees, or by canoe along the river. The people were proud and full of joy. At sunset, you could hear their talking drums from far away, sending messages to other villages, calling hunters home, marking births and weddings. The beat of those drums was the heartbeat of Obudu. But one night, just before the rooster crowed, the drums stopped mid-beat. In the morning, the village was gone. Fires still burned under clay pots. Bowls of yam and soup sat untouched. Goats and chickens wandered freely, bleating into the silence. And in that silence, you could feel something, as if the air itself was holding its breath. Only 3 souls remained, and one of them was a stranger. One was Okoro, a tall, strong hunter whose spear had never missed its mark. Beside him was his younger sister, Amina, a girl with a mind full of stories and dreams. The third was a woman they had never seen before. She called herself Efioma. She had arrived only the night before, and by dawn, the village was gone. This is the story of the night the drums went silent. The day before the disappearance began like any other. The sun hung bright above the forest, and the air was filled with the sounds of laughter and work. Women pounded yam in large wooden mortars, each beat falling in rhythm. Children ran barefoot through the red dust, their shouts mixing with the steady boom of the talking drums. The river sparkled nearby, carrying the voices of fishermen as they hauled in their catch. As the shadows of evening grew longer, the people of Obudu gathered around the great fire. Elder Nedi, the oldest man in the village, sat on his carved stool. His white agbode glowed in the firelight, and cowrie shells tied to his staff rattled softly as he moved. Tonight, he began. I will tell you the story of Eku, the spirit of the forest. The drums slowed. Even the children stopped whispering. Eku, he said, is the guardian of all that grows here. His eyes are the fireflies, his cloak is made of leaves, and his voice is the wind in the trees. Long ago, our fathers swore never to harm the sacred Iroko tree at the heart of the forest. For if it is wounded, Eku will come and take back what belongs to the forest. The fire cracked loudly. A child clung to her mother's wrapper. Then, the sound of water splashing came from the riverbank. A canoe appeared, moving slowly in the fading light. From it stepped a woman. Her wrapper was the deep green of forest leaves after rain. Coral beads rested on her neck and wrist. In her hand, a small leather pouch jingled with charms. I am Efioma, she said softly. I have traveled far, and I ask for shelter tonight. The people welcomed her, as was their custom. They gave her food, a place to sleep, and kind smiles. But Amina, watching her from across the fire, thought she saw something in Efioma's eyes. A look that lingered too long on the forest. That night, the moon was full, bathing the village in silver light. The fires burned low. One by one, the villagers drifted into sleep. But Amina couldn't sleep. She lay on her mat, listening to the night sounds, the chirp of crickets, the croak of frogs, the faint murmur of the river. And then, something else. A voice. Soft. Almost like singing. She rose quietly, wrapping her thin cloth around her shoulders, and stepped outside. The sound was coming from the forest path, the one that led to the sacred Iroko tree. She crept closer, hiding behind the thick leaves. There, in the clearing, stood Efioma. Her arms were raised, and the charms from her pouch glinted in the moonlight. She spoke in a tongue Amina had never heard, old and heavy, like the ground itself was listening. As she finished, the wind changed. It came rushing from deep within the forest, carrying a faint smell of wet earth, and something else. Something sour. Amina's heart pounded. She ran back to her mat, pulling her cloth tightly around herself. She told herself she'd imagined it, just a dream. But in another part of the village, Okoro too was awake. He had been sharpening his spear when he saw a shadow slip past the hut. He followed quietly, and saw exactly what his sister had seen. Neither of them spoke of it in the morning. And perhaps, that was their first mistake. The next night began with music. The great festival drum was brought out, its skin stretched tight, painted with red and white patterns. The drummer's hands moved like lightning, sending messages into the night. People danced in circles, stamping their feet in the dust, beads rattling at their ankles. The smell of roasting goat meat filled the air. Then, without warning, the music stumbled. Bum bum bum, bum, silence. The last beat hung in the air like a question. The dancers froze mid-step. Elder Neddy rose slowly from his stool. "Why do the drums stop?" he called. The lead drummer, sweat pouring down his face, stared at the skin of the drum. His lips trembled. "Elder, it is not my hands. It is the drum. It will not speak." A sudden wind swept through the clearing. The fire bent low, sparks flying into the air. The torches flickered and went out one by one, leaving only the moon. Somewhere in the darkness, a goat bleated, then stopped. The people whispered to each other in fear. Elder Neddy's voice shook. "Go to your homes. Lock your doors. No one steps outside until sunrise." That was the last order he ever gave. The rooster crowed. The sun rose. Amina woke to a strange stillness. Usually, the morning was full of noise, women calling to each other, children running to the river, the thump of pesos in the mortars. But this morning, nothing. She stepped outside. The paths were empty. The cooking fire still burned, but the food in the pot was untouched. A bowl of fufu sat with a wooden spoon still in it, as if someone had just stepped away. "Okoro," she called. Her brother came from the other side of the compound, spear in hand. His face was pale. "They are gone. All of them." "Gone where?" "I searched the river. No canoes are missing. I checked the path. No footprints lead out." It was then they heard the sound of footsteps behind them. Ifeoma stood there, her green wrapper now covered in fine dust. She smiled faintly. "You two are awake," she said softly. "Good. That means you are meant to be here." Okoro's grip tightened on his spear. "Where are our people?" She looked toward the forest. "They have been called home." And before they could speak again, she began to walk toward the path. Amina and Okoro followed Ifeoma, their bare feet silent on the packed earth. The morning sun was high, but the forest ahead looked strangely dim, as if the trees themselves blocked the light. The path twisted, roots pushing up from the soil like gnarled fingers. Strange carvings marked the trunks, symbols neither of them had ever seen. "We shouldn't be here," Amina whispered. Okoro nodded, his eyes darting to the shadows. "Stay close." Ifeoma walked with steady steps, never once looking back. Her green wrapper trailed in the dust, and the charms around her neck clinked softly. Then they reached it, the great Iroko tree. Its trunk was wider than a hut, its branches stretching high into the mist. At its base lay small clay pots filled with dark liquid, feathers, and cowrie shells. Ifeoma stopped and placed her hand on the tree. "Long before you were born," she said quietly, "this village made a promise. A promise to the forest spirit that lives here. Once every 100 seasons, the spirit would call the people home. Today, the promise is kept." Amina's voice shook. "You mean they are gone forever?" Ifeoma turned, her eyes strangely bright. "Not gone. Just where they belong." Then the wind rose, swirling dust around their feet. The forest grew darker still. And somewhere in that darkness came the sound of many footsteps. But they saw no one. The air thickened, heavy and warm, pressing against their skin. The footsteps grew louder, but still there were no bodies to match the sound. Then, the ground trembled. From the shadow of the great tree stepped a figure. Tall, robed in flowing cloth that shifted like smoke, its face hidden behind a mask carved from smooth black wood. Cowrie shells dangled from its wrist, clinking with every movement. The voice that came from the mask was neither man nor woman, but deep, echoing, like it came from inside the earth. "The promise has been kept," it said. "They walk now where no sickness, no hunger, no war can reach them." Okoro stepped forward, spear in hand. "Return them. They are our people." The spirit tilted its head. "Do you speak for them? Or for yourself?" Amina's eyes filled with tears. "We only want them back." The spirit looked at Ifeoma. "And you? You were my hand in this." Ifeoma bowed her head. "I serve as the elders before me served. I obeyed the call." The spirit raised its arms, and for a moment, shapes flickered in the air, the villagers, walking in a line through a bright, endless field. They looked peaceful. But when Amina called their names, none turned to her. The vision faded. "Leave this place," the spirit said. "And speak of it only in whispers." The wind rose again. The forest dimmed further. And when Amina blinked, the spirit and Ifeoma were gone. Amina and Okoro walked back alone. The village lay silent under the midday sun. Empty huts stood with doors wide open. The cooking pots were cold. Even the goats were gone. They sat under the great baobab tree in the center of the square. Neither spoke for a long time. Finally, Okoro said, "We can stay. Or we can leave." Amina looked around. Every wall, every path, every smell of the place was tied to the people who had lived here. Staying would mean living with ghosts. Leaving would mean never seeing it again. That night, they lit a single fire. The stars burned bright above them. But somewhere in the forest, they heard it, the low, steady beat of a drum. Bum, bum, bum. Okoro gripped his spear. "Do you hear it?" Amina nodded slowly. The sound grew softer, as if moving away, deeper into the forest. They sat in silence, listening, until it was gone. At dawn, they gathered what little they could carry. They did not look back as they walked away. But many years later, travelers spoke of a place far beyond the forest, a place where people danced without tiring, where food never ran out, where the drums never stopped. And they said, the faces of those dancers looked strangely familiar.